Good morning, everybody. Welcome to Future of FinTech, Talent and Skills. I'm Joe Roche, Engagement Manager for FinTech North. I'm just going to wait 30 seconds or so for people to join the event and get underway. But yeah, I just wanted to welcome you initially at the start. So without further ado, I'll get things underway. I just want to say a big thank you to you, the FinTech North community, for joining this event. I want to say a huge thank you to all of our speakers for lending their expertise and supporting this session. I'd also like to thank Matt Burton Associates for being a fantastic supporter of ours this year. We couldn't have pulled this session together without their expertise. So yeah, really big thanks to Matt, to Scott and the team there for supporting this session. So yeah, I'm Joe Roche. I'm Engagement Manager for FinTech North. I'm responsible for all the event, all the marketing and all the commercial activity for FinTech North. So what is FinTech North? I should probably say a few words about that, especially for those joining us for the first time this morning. So FinTech North is a not-for-profit organisation. We were founded in 2016. And we are the focal point for FinTech in the Northern Powerhouse. So we bring the Northern FinTech community together. We do that primarily through event activity. And we've hosted 65 events, I think it is, since founding in 2016. It is a community of people who are interested in FinTech, who are working in FinTech spread across the North. It's over 4,000 strong now. And we've built that community, as I say, through hosting events. We also host full-day conferences. We've hosted 8 of those across the North in Leeds, Manchester, Liverpool, and Newcastle. And we've hosted one virtual conference as of a couple of weeks ago with our Manchester conference, and we've hosted 6 trade missions with the Department for International Trade. We regularly host events, virtually at the minute, such as this. So if you or your organisation are interested in speaking or sponsoring, I'd really love to hear from you. My email is joe@fintechnorth.uk if you want to get in touch about speaking or sponsoring. Like I say, regularly host events around FinTech topics that are of interest to the community, such as talent and skills today. So really excited for today's session. I'm kicking things off now. I'll quickly hand over to my director, Julian Wells, to compare the session. He'll hand over to Matt Burton of MBA to say a few words, and then we'll be going into our speaker lineup. We'll hear first from James Caan CBE. Really excited to hear from James. It's the first time we've had a dragon on FinTech North at FinTech North here. We'll then hear from Amul of North Coders, Stuart of Manchester Metropolitan University, Patrice of Ignata and Emaneer, and then we'll hear from all of our speakers in a panel discussion to be joined by Manila McLean, who's Chief Information Officer at Newcastle Strategic Solutions. So this event is, we're taking a holistic look at talent and skills across FinTech, and really excited to hear what our speakers have to say. Just a quick reminder for our attendees: if you have any questions for our panel, for our speakers, please feel free to put those in the Q&A function at the bottom of your screen. We'll get to those at the end in the panel discussion. I think that's everything from me, really. Julian, I'll hand over to you to introduce our speakers, and I hope everybody enjoys the event.
Thanks, Joe. Morning, everybody. Welcome to FinTech North. Welcome back if you've been with us before. Great to be hosting another event. We've had a couple of really cracking events lately. As Joe mentioned, we had the Manchester conference, and last week we had a Future of Savings event, which was thoroughly enjoyable and lots of great feedback. So today we're on a really hot topic in FinTech, skills and talent. And I always, whenever people ask me about the fundamentals of FinTech, I always say it comes down to people and money. So we're going to be looking at both of those today, actually, as we go through the course of events. I'm going to compare, so I'm not going to say any more now. I'd just like to hand over to Matt from Matt Burton Associates. And thanks for co-hosting today with us, Matt. It's been great working with you lately, as Joe said, and I'd love to hear a few words of welcome from you.
Yeah, Julian, that's my pleasure, mate. Firstly, thanks, Julian and Joe. I mean, we've been on this journey, it feels like now, for about 6 to 9 months. And I think what was really unfortunate is that this event actually was due to take place on March the 15th, I think, Scott, if I'm correct. We had a drinks and canapes event booked for the Devonshire Club in London, and then something called coronavirus reared its ugly head the week before. So unfortunately, we had to cancel. So this is was kind of 7-8 months in the waiting to get together. So firstly, thanks Julian, Joe, but also thanks to James, Patrice, Samuel, Stuart, and Manila for giving up their time. I'm not going to say much because I've got a dragon breathing down my neck coming on next. But I did want to just say a couple of things around why FinTech has become quite an obsession with MBA. I did have an analogy I was going to play out around my 2.5-year-old daughter, Millie, and broccoli, but I tried to play it back to my wife this morning, and she kindly advised me in a less than tactful way to not to do that. So the point I was going to make was that I don't think our industries are that different. The majority of people, and I say this in as least offensive way as I can, are pretty and innately mediocre at evaluating long-term gains, and I think that's fair to say within the financial services market as well, where spending something today is nowhere near as thinking about long-term investment and long-term returns is nowhere near as much fun as spending money today, and the kind of the same goes within the recruitment industry. So whereas FinTech for me has tackled this issue by being smart, automated, making complex things just look really beautiful, it's taken away that level of complexity and made dealing with finances a damn sight more fun. And I think that's the point with our industry, and why I think MBA is not that dissimilar. I don't believe our industry has evolved that much at all. Certainly since I started 20 years ago, a lot of the same tools are being used now as they were then. Whereas talent should be in the kind of daily consciousness of our audience, in the same way that buying something today is a lot more interesting for financial services consumers. For a lot of hiring communities we've worked with in the past, saying you're hired today is a lot more fulfilling than making investments in those talent tools that create sustainable, balanced, really talented workforce that we want in the future. And I think it's something that's kind of our vision, which is to deliver smart, mission-orientated, optically and genuinely nice-looking talent solutions that help transform our clients. I think what I'm trying to say is that FinTech's a natural home for us, and I'm committed to sharing our knowledge, our experiences in many events to come alongside FinTech North, if Julian and Joe will continue to have us. It's been a tough time for professional community hubs like this with the backdrop of the pandemic and the cancellation of events, but I think Joe and Julian are aware that we're committed to supporting you and the community to further that thought leadership where we can around all things people. So that's me done. I'll hand back to you, Julian. Again, appreciate the opportunity, mate.
Thank you, Matt. Thank you. Right, well, let's get on with the show, and it's an absolute pleasure to introduce our first speaker today, James Caan CBE. As Joe said, we've not had a dragon on FinTech North before, and of course that's how many people will know of James. But I think the reason we've got James speaking today is because of his association with MBA, but also his background. Not everyone will know this, is in recruitment, and he's of course been a serial investor, as we're all aware. James, I'd like to ask you to unmute and put your camera on, and to share a few thoughts with us this morning. Thank you.
Well, indeed. Firstly, great pleasure to be joining you today. I think the entrepreneurial community has always been the one area I'm probably most comfortable with. So I think it's really good for me to be kind of communicating with you guys today. What I'd like to do is kind of maybe set the scene a bit in terms of a bit of background and context. As probably some of you know, I started my career initially founding a business called Alexander Mann. And I think that was really where I recognized the value and the importance of talent and leadership. Because to have grown Alexander Mann, which today has become the world's largest human capital business, spanning in some 27 countries, employing 7,500 people, with revenues today of just over $1 billion, the key ingredient for that success, without a doubt, was really down to the ability to attract the right people and the right talent and the right leadership in order to make that happen. Through the success of Alexander Mann, I had the privilege of being involved in placing over 1 million successful candidates, which kind of puts it into context, the sheer scale and size of the business. Like a lot of entrepreneurs, I had the opportunity of realizing the value in the business that I'd created in Alexander Mann, and sold the company to a private equity firm based in Boston, Advent International, which allowed me to realize the time and the 17 years that I've spent in creating Alexander Mann. Having sold the business, because I left school at 16, one of the reflections that I had in my career was never having finished school. So having sold the company, I decided to go back to school and did a business degree at Harvard Business School. Just kind of realized that maybe if I had completed my education, it may have given me a little bit more strength in terms of background. But also I was bringing up 2 children at the time and lecturing them on the importance of education and university, and yet I'd never done that before. So I wanted to kind of lead by example and show them just how important I think it was. Having done my course at Harvard Business School, I did what most grads do, and took a gap year because I wanted to, find myself and travel a bit and do the things that most young people do, but I did at the age of 42. Coming back from my gap year, I decided not necessarily to be an operator, but become an investor. And as a consequence, set up my own private equity firm, Hamilton Bradshaw. Through Hamilton Bradshaw, I've invested in 27 different talent organizations, including MBA, because I've tended to focus on my background and experience. So I tend to invest in businesses that I really understand, that I've got some background in. During my time at the private equity firm, I was approached by the UK government to help launch a program to stimulate the UK economy and spearhead entrepreneurship. And they asked me effectively to back entrepreneurs in the UK to start their own business. I was given the task to launch a company called Startup Loans, which I was the founder of. And my target was to start 10,000 new businesses across the UK, backing talented entrepreneurs. In my 3-year tenure there, when I stepped down as founder chairman, we'd started 28,000 businesses, employing 105,000 people, which probably, if I reflect back on my career, was probably the most exciting part of anything I've ever done. To have had the opportunity to work with so many entrepreneurs and start so many businesses was an incredible, incredible experience. Whilst doing that, I was approached by the BBC, who approached me to join the panel of Dragon's Den. And on my time on the show, I invested in 14 businesses, investing just over £1.4 million of my own capital. So I've got that experience and understanding of both the talent acquisition area, but also backing different businesses and different entrepreneurs in terms of my experience. I think during my time as an investor, the thing probably in the last 5 years that has come up a lot is the whole space of fintech, which is really the area that we're discussing today. And what I really wanted to share with you was just from my own point of view, the importance of talent and leadership. So if you look through my background and my career, through Alexander Mann, through Startup Loans, through Dragon's Den, the one key thing that I think puts that together in terms of the success that I've experienced is the value and importance that people play in those activities. The success of all of those businesses, if I had to think of one thing, I would put it down to, would be the importance of entrepreneurs like ourselves focusing on the area of talent attraction. So when a lot of people ask me the question, James, how would you describe yourself? Are you a great businessman, or are you very good at financials? Are you a good operator? I think the skill set that I've developed probably is my passion for focusing on, concentrating on finding the right people to build businesses. Because ultimately, in our industry, people are what create and build businesses. And I probably today spend 2/3 of my time focusing on talent attraction. And what I recognize is the business is only as good as the people around it, and the skill, the quality, and the caliber of people that we have is ultimately what defines the business. And when you look at the investment community, whenever I've made an investment that's worked really successfully, it's interesting when you describe that success, you generally describe it by saying, I back the right team. You know, you rarely pick on the product, but you generally comment on the caliber and the quality of team that's built that success. So for me, when I'm looking for talent, the key thing that I focus on is leadership, because in order to grow a business and build a business, if you don't have good leaders in the business, it is very difficult to scale. And as we all know, if you're trying to build value, value generally comes from scale. And to be able to scale the business, you need people that share your vision, that have the expertise of execution and delivery. So what are the characteristics that I tend to focus on? I need somebody that in themselves is a genuine leader. So I'm sure we've come across the expression, is he a good manager or is he a good leader? You know, to me, a leader is somebody with vision that has the opportunity and the ability to attract talent himself. So whenever I'm interviewing somebody in that capacity, one of the key questions that I tend to ask him is, walk me through the people that you identified yourself, because a lot of good businesses that I come across are good leaders. In some cases, have inherited the team. So I'm particularly interested in who did you actually hire yourself, but also where did you attract those individuals from? What kind of following do you have in the market? And how would people describe you as a leader? The other thing I tend to look for is leaders have to have the ability to making the right decisions. The strength of any leader is his ability to make tough decisions at the right time. And if you look at the pandemic we've experienced in the last 6 to 9 months, I think the importance of leadership has probably been the difference between success and failure. Businesses that have come through this pandemic today are essentially businesses that are run by people who've had the ability to make tough decisions, who've been decisive. The other thing you want to focus on leaders is their ability to work with quality management information. The quality of your decisions are only as good as the information that you use in order to make that decision. So what I tend to do is focus heavily around how do they manage, how do they make tough decisions? And in the interview process, I typically want to know, you know, in your career today, what are the 3 decisions that you've made that were the toughest decisions for you? And it helps me understand the individual and understand, you know, his caliber and the quality of his mindset and the quality of how he thinks and how he prepares in the decisions that he makes. If I look at myself today, you know, every day I'm faced with challenges and decisions that I have to make. The way I address those decisions is really based on the quality of information that I use in order to make that decision. I think today we're in a very fortunate position that with technology, we have access to a huge amount of data. The key skill is being able to convert that data into quality information that allows you to take the right decisions. So when I'm looking at managing businesses from a distance, I don't have the opportunity of being inside the businesses on a daily basis to really see what's happening on the ground. And therefore, I'm left with making decisions based on key bits of data. So the key thing, I think, when you're looking to hiring talent or you're looking to hire from a leadership perspective, is what data have they been used to dealing with from which they make decisions? And I think that's a really key fundamental part for me when I'm looking at leaders, because if they're just making decisions on the run, if they're just making decisions on the who, the quality of those decisions can be challenged. But if they make decisions based on high quality information and high quality data, the chances are they've got every opportunity of getting those decisions to work. I think if I look at the fintech space today, I mean, it's probably one of the most disruptive areas within the financial services sector. You know, I think the last 5 to 10 years, financial services have really been transformed as a result of the innovations that are taking place. But when you look at fintech, to me, fintech businesses are a collection of people, and therefore the importance of talent and leadership is probably as prevalent in that space as you would ever see it anywhere else before. I think the other part that I think is really important is recently we had Patrice, who you're going to be hearing from later, looking at our own kind of diversity strategy. I think a lot of us talk about diversity, understand it, but what do we really do about it? You know, how balanced is our organization? And one of the things that I was really proud of is when Patrice ran a survey across my organization, we scored very highly in terms of our diversity policy and the way in which we attract talent, which is a reflection of the community in which we live in, and making sure that we have proper representation from a gender perspective and also from an ethnicity perspective. So I think gender is something that's playing a bigger and more crucial part in our businesses today than probably ever before. I would certainly say, from somebody with experience of that field, it plays a big part towards our success. I think having a balanced organization where you've got clear representation from different groups of people within the communities that we operate in actually is a very powerful ingredient to the success that we achieve. So I think definitely will be quite interesting to see some of the observations that Patrice will share with us. I think when I look at the investment we made in MBA, I think the success that MBA today is achieving is largely down to Matt's ability to attract the talent around him. You know, his business today is only as good as the people he has. And even despite the challenges of the pandemic, you know, we had a fantastic year in 2019 where the business grew nearly 100%, which was phenomenal. This year in the pandemic, you know, I was really hoping that if he could just maintain what he achieved last year, and even if he didn't grow at all, but maintaining that growth would have been phenomenal. But despite the pandemic, but despite lockdown, you know, MBA has still seen nearly a 50% growth on the previous year, which I think is outstanding. And a lot of people have said to me, you know, how is that even possible in a market where people are in lockdown, businesses are really finding it difficult. But I think once you build a strong brand in the market, once you get recognized for attracting the quality of talent you need, I think you can still outperform the market. And I think for me as an investor, it was amazing to see the success that MBA has achieved this year. So I think to summarize, I think for me, success is about talent. People say to me, it's always very difficult to find good talent. The key question for me is how much time do you spend looking for talent? A lot of leaders, you know, complain about it, but then when they look at their diaries, the question is, are we really spending enough time focusing on that? And then when you do find talent, it's understanding the type of talent you're looking for and what you need to be successful. So I think on that note, let me hand back to the team. It was a pleasure to address you all this morning, and let me wish you every success and a great end to the year. Thank you so much.
Thank you, James. Thank you. That was a fantastic opening session. You've covered so much ground there. Really set the scene for the rest. Will you be able to join us for the panel discussion later on in the event?
I've got another Zoom call coming in just before that, so I won't be able to make that. But I'm certainly very keen to be around for Patrice's section, because I think the diversity point is a really key one, and I think something will be really interesting for all of us.
Yeah, no, agreed. Well, you'll hear Patrice's session of which will be around 20 to 12. Well, may I take the opportunity just to ask you a couple of things quickly now, then, if we don't?
Of course.
You're with us on the panel. You were running through a great number of points there, and obviously a lot of emphasis in your decision making and your investments is around the people that you meet. And you talked about the kind of characteristics that you want to see in businesses that you invest in. Are there any things you could highlight that are common faults that entrepreneurs display that really turn you off from continuing conversations with them?
I think that the issue of talent for me is a big one, because businesses are built around people. And I think sometimes we get over obsessed about how amazing our product is, which I'm sure it may be, but products don't sell themselves. You need the right people around you. So when I meet somebody who claims to have achieved incredible amounts of success, but have never really hired talented individuals themselves, because in most cases, they've either inherited them or they've been there before. For me, that's not a good ingredient for a successful leader that I'm looking for. So one of the things that I want to know is, what kind of following does that individual have? You know, what sort of network does he have? You know, how do people describe him? Now, if for the sake of argument, I say to somebody, look, if we offered you a position today in a leadership capacity, you know, who are the 5 people that you know who want to immediately come and join you because of your track record and success? If he can't think of 5 people, you know, there is a message in there that if somebody's been in business for 10 years, that claims to be incredibly successful, but can't think of 5 people who want to join or follow him, you know, it's a great telling point for me. The other thing that puts me off is when I'm looking at leaders, the thing that I find really amazing is, one of the questions I always ask somebody is when they come along for an interview, if it's a senior individual, I say, did you download my accounts? Did you have a look at the accounts? And what I find incredible is how many people just don't do that. You know, it costs no money. You go to company's house, you can download a set of accounts. But if you're joining an organization in a senior leadership position, how important is it to understand what the financial health of that business is? And for something that is so accessible, so available, and immediately it puts me off, because I think you're joining a business almost blind without actually knowing, you know, what our financial state is. So I'm looking for somebody that can think outside the box, that shows some strength of leadership, but also, because of the point I made earlier, the thing that's important to me is, how do people make decisions? And if you're making decisions without quality information, the chances are you're going to make more bad decisions than good decisions. And even that one simple question about, did you download the account? And the answer is no, which amazingly enough, I have to tell you, 8 out of 10 people, the answer is no. And of course, it just immediately puts me off, because it just tells me something that if you're coming to see me for an interview and you haven't researched the basic information that should enable you to make the right decision, then how are you going to make decisions representing me in a business that I'm invested in? So I think those are the kind of things that stand out for me that probably could put me off.
Okay, great, thank you. Yeah, some great tips in there. That that's one other thing I'll ask you about, and then we'll move on, because I do want to make sure you have the chance to question as well. Plus the other speakers, I think you'll enjoy listening to Amal and Stuart as well. You mentioned diversity. I mean, we see this as a really hot topic and right across the board at the moment. Joe wrote a brilliant blog recently about diversity and the challenges of running events and diversity. I've heard from a couple of investors that they're refusing to invest in businesses unless they have a diverse leadership group. Have you seen that as a widespread trend? And is that something that you consciously acknowledge as well in your decision making?
I mean, I think one of the things that I've learned is the business should reflect the community in which we operate in. And I think Britain is a multicultural society. You know, we have representations from all ethnicities. We've got gender balances, etc. So if your organization does not look the same as the community in which you operate a business in, how can you address the consumers? How can you understand the same consumers that you want to be dealing with if you don't have that representation in your own organization? And when I look at the businesses that I've invested in that have a gender diversity policy, what that tells me is we understand the markets we represent. We're able to identify the consumers that we're trying to target because we represent them within our own organization. So, you know, if you have a completely, white male dominated organization, then you're not really representing or representative of the community that you represent, because that's not necessarily going to be your entire consumer base. So I think it's important for me, and it's one of the questions that I ask when I'm looking to invest in a business, is how well do you understand your market? and how well is your organization represented in that market? And it just immediately opens that question of diversity. Do you even understand it? And what are you doing about it?
Well, thank you. James, thank you so much. It's a pleasure to have you with us today. And, you know, we recorded the session, so the insights that you shared are going to be there for people to listen to who want to play this back later as well. Thank you very much.
Pleasure, absolute pleasure.
And so I'm going to move on to Amal now from North Coders. We did spend a little bit longer on James's session there, but with James not joining us for the panel, I've sort of switched the timings around a little bit. I'm sure everyone understands. Amal, great to have you. You've obviously spoken at FinTech North several times, and it's always interesting to hear the latest from North Coders. And I'll hand over to you now. Thanks.
Thanks so much, Julian. Thanks for having me. Thanks, Julian, Joe, Matt. Great to hear from you, James. And you know, Julian and Joe have asked me to just talk about what North Coders do in relation to kind of people and what we've done over the last few years. And I really want to pick up the baton on a few things from what James was saying, especially around people, because everything that North Coders does and everything that we stand for is around making sure that people get the best out of themselves and making sure those organizations that need those people have them to thrive. And I'm going to talk a lot about diversity and inclusion because it is one of our founding kind of pillars, one of our founding values. So North Coders is, I guess, started life, I think, as what people now know as a coding bootcamp. We started in 2016, founded in 2015, and the idea behind North Coders and why it was founded was very much because we couldn't rely, the tech industry as a whole couldn't rely on people with computer science degrees from universities to fill their software development, coding, talent pipeline forever, for a lot of reasons. And Chris, one of the founders, found himself working at Sky and then Sky Bet in Leeds in 2014 and 2015, and he was recognizing that around them, the people were coming out of university were all pretty similar. They had all chosen to do computer science age 17 before they'd done their A-levels. They were generally men, generally from middle-class backgrounds and generally white. And there wasn't enough of them anyway. So at Sky and Sky Bet, the grads would come through, all being quite similar, and also all having quite a similar academic background, a background that wasn't molded to get them ready for the fast changing pace, the world of work, that they needed to thrive and not just survive, but thrive in. And what we really needed was something in the North, and we'll talk about the North initially, and I'll kind of extrapolate on that a little bit. But what we really needed was a diverse background of people to fill that need for software development and for coding talent. And you couldn't do that by just hiring comp sci graduates from university. We had to look elsewhere. Nothing wrong with comp sci graduates, nothing wrong with their academic grounding, but in order to quickly fulfill the growing skills need for techs and fintechs across the North, we needed, in order to diversify that need, we needed to figure out a new way of creating this talent, really. So what was founded was a coding bootcamp, a 12-week course to take people who were really interested in becoming technologists, figuring out if those people were right for a 12-week intensive, ridiculously hard, mind-bending training program, and then introducing them to those businesses once they finished. So we started in 2016. There were 10 of us, 10 students that the founding partners attracted to their first 12-week bootcamp in Manchester. And since 2016, North Coders has now graduated over 700 people through our program, 96% of whom have gone on to find software development roles in over 150, probably nearly 200 companies as junior software developers. And that for those people that have got those roles have then very, very quickly not remained junior for very long. Within a year to sort of 18 months, they're kind of knocking on the door of mid-level. Within 3 years, a lot of them are senior developers, and we already have someone from one of those first few cohorts in Manchester who is at a CTO level already. How does this work? Why has it been so successful? Why are fintechs across the north hiring these people? Let me just give you a few examples of those fintechs. So, you know, traditional banks, Barclays, First Direct, Co-op Bank, Think Money, Mojo Mortgages, more challenger companies, Mutual Vision, Oplo, Access Pay, Bankify, Decimal, Money Supermarket, all businesses that in the fintech sphere based in the north that hire people that come out of North Coders. Well, we're very much a people first business, but what we wanted to do was as much as possible democratize these people that they don't need to have gone to university. In fact, people who come and do North Codes, it doesn't matter whether they've got a degree, a PhD, or whether they've got they haven't even got a GCSE. We've had people who don't have GCSEs, Chris, my business partner included. You know, the idea is that we want to figure out if people are right for technology. And so people can apply to us and we'll give them a coding starter pack, a 30-hour pack to figure out whether they like coding, whether coding's for them, whether they get the bug for it, whether they are interested enough to finish that coding starter pack and actually go, you know what, this is something I want to do for a living. For those that finish the pack and that want to come to the entry challenge, you can't just turn up to North Coders with a check and say, I'd like to do this course. I'd like the outcome that, you know, your 96% of graduates have got. I want to, you know, you need to prove A, that you have got the mindset for the course, and B, that actually you enjoy it, because there's no point turning up with a check if you don't enjoy it, if you don't really enjoy solving those problems, because it is problem solving that is the heart of coding. So people take that entry challenge, and if they pass, then they are given, only then they're given a place on the course, and only then will we start, the hard work really begins. Pre-lockdown, 12 weeks, every day, and we teach people to code workplace principles first, and we teach people, you know, in one language, but the real key about North Coders is we actually don't teach people to code, we teach people to teach themselves code. And that means they can pick up any language, any framework, any technology very, very, very quickly. And that is why when they graduate from North Coders and they get a job on average within 30 days of finishing the course, they then perform, as I said, so quickly, and they get on, they become invaluable employees at those businesses. And the key with all of this really is that it's designed to get, and I'm going to start picking up on the diversity side of things here, it's designed to get people from any background into this technology world, into fintechs, into techs in general. So we've had people from the backgrounds of financial services and from legal backgrounds and from traditional engineering backgrounds, from recruitment, quite a few people who have placed software developers kind of see North Coders pop up on people's LinkedIn and CVs and go, actually, you know what, I'd actually like to be in the position of being placed rather than the person that places those persons. But then at the other end of the spectrum, we've had people who have been on job seekers allowance and claiming benefits, and people who have been refugees, and people who have come from a retail background or the gig economy, from Uber to Deliveroo cyclists, to people who have been stay-at-home mums and not worked before, people from the creative industries, so buskers to singers to classical musicians. We've had an Olympic gymnast do the course who's now working as a software developer. We've had the station announcer at Piccadilly Station who's now a software developer at an insurance company in Sale in Manchester. And we've had a farmer come and do the course who is now working at Wejo as a data engineer. people discover they want to do this, they get the bug, and actually it doesn't matter about their background. It matters about their determination to make it work, and it matters about their determination to really, their understanding and their love of actually building things and solving problems. But diversity to us, so our sort of three founding values when we started North Coders were building a community. One, that community needed to be built around excellence, which is what our selection process that I've described is about. But the main thing for us is diversity and inclusion. That community needed to be as diverse and as inclusive as possible. And we've done everything we can to increase not just the gender gap, because that's the easy one to talk about in technology, because, you know, in Manchester, it's like women in technical roles make up 18%. And that needs to be 50%. If we're really going to have a truly diverse industry, we need to get that up to 50%. North Coders operates about between 30% and a third of our students and graduates are women. We need to get it to 50, and we won't rest till we get it to 50. But I look at diversity in a much more broad spectrum. I look at it in terms of being age diverse. So the youngest person that's ever done North Coders is 17. The oldest person is mid-50s. And we've taught everyone in between. And I think when you look at that diversity of experience that people can bring from those other industries into technology, it gives them advantage. You know, we can teach school leavers, we can teach apprentices, but we can teach people who have had a career in the city, stop working, and we can teach people who have driven a forklift truck around all their lives. And those are two other examples. So it's really important those types of people, when they're creating the technology, they're creating technology that is without bias as well. That is, you know, if we're talking about a bunch of white guys who have all been to university, then, you know, inherent bias can get caught up in the technology that gets written. And it's so imperative that actually we tear down that, and we make sure that everyone who creates technology, people who create technology, come from as many different backgrounds as possible. And I want to talk about diversity in terms of sort of BAME and different ethnicities. And I want to talk about the LGBTQ plus communities. Both of those communities are very well represented in our alumni community at North Coders. And I want to talk about neurodiversity. And we've had a number of people who have been on the autism spectrum, and we've had people with mental health difficulties in the past, and we've had people with other kinds of neurodiversities come and do the course. So that's what our course is designed to really, really bring as many different people as possible into technology, and for those people to thrive within fintechs and all kinds of technological companies as possible. So that's kind of the background. I think you know, we founded with big picture ambitions to kind of do something in the North, to take, you know, we've got one of the big things that happens that exists and is only being accentuated really is this poverty divide. We've got in Manchester, there's over 600,000 people living below the poverty line, and then on one side and on the other side we talk about you know, this big skills gap. And now as unemployment is rising, and we have got a real opportunity to actually, we've got an army of people that need these skills and that need work, and we've got a big gap of people that can create technology. And so that was the founding ambition of North Coders, to actually make a real big picture financial change in the North. And I think, you know, over 700 people who wouldn't have had these jobs are now in work. And, you know, when you think about value, when you think about starting salaries of £25,000 and people earning £60,000 having done North Coders 3 years ago, I think, and the impacts that would have made to not only their lives, but those businesses' lives, and then the wider impacts that have those businesses having those people employed, I think, you know, it's starting to come to quite a large, almost, you know, well in the millions of business value that's being created on top of the individuals, people who, you know, we know whose lives we've helped change. So that's kind of the background of North Coders. But I want to sort of talk about a a little bit more about, for me, what we're doing next, because coding boot camps are springing up all over the place, and whether or not they've got the same values and the same thrive or the same sort of desire for the excellence in the people and the excellence in the skills that we deliver are there or not is neither here nor there for me. What we are now proving that we are, and not just a place where we can get beginners into code, because we can do that, and we've done that. But we've set up ways in which we can then support those people once they've got over that junior phase, into their careers, and we can support those businesses with further training that's government funded to make sure that they're not just beginners and chucked into those businesses. So we've devised an apprenticeship program called Dev Accelerator. It relies on the standards of the level 4 software development apprenticeship, but we have devised it so that you can take a junior developer, someone that's come off a boot camp or come out of university or self-taught, and get them to the skills required of a mid-level developer in a 13-month program funded by the apprenticeship levy. And that is, we launched it just before lockdown, and we started in earnest in May and June this year, and we've already got a number of businesses and their employees that are taking advantage of this program. And the other thing that we've done this year is launch a solutions division. So we wanted our developers, our teachers, to actually be able to not just say they can teach and teach with excellence, but they need to be developing every day. And we develop all of our internal systems at North Coders, but we've started doing some external projects for Manchester City Council, for the Idle, the LNG company I mentioned earlier on, building them a chatbot, building Manchester City Council a remote learning piece of software for their adult English courses. So the people that teach at North Coders are excellent. The people they have, and they code every day. It isn't just an academic profession, but it's a real life profession. But the vision for North Coders is very much to grow, to be a lifelong technology skills and solution partner for businesses and for people, and for those, and for us not to just be just in the north. So Birmingham's on our roadmap too, and we want to annex that part of the country into the north as well. So I think probably my time is up. So thank you very much for listening. I hope you found that useful, and I look forward to joining the panel discussion shortly.
Thanks, Amal. It's always great to hear what you guys are doing, and it is an amazing story. And you're widely celebrated across the north for the achievements of North Coders, and it's all very well deserved as well. We'll have you with us on the panel discussion as well, of course. Thanks again, Stuart. I'd like to hand over to you now from Manchester Met, and tell us a bit about how the university's been pioneering FinTech Masters courses and other developments.
Brilliant, thanks, Julian. I want to start by telling you about a big bank in London, and they had a technology project to do. And the first step with any project for a big bank, we know, is you need colourful beanbags, a pool table, some sweets, and in essence, anything to make the office look like Google. And into this environment, they dragged some of the best bankers with knowledge of regulations and systems. They recruited a load of IT specialists, some in-house, some as contractors, and they brought them all into one place to work together on the project. So I rang one of the senior leaders to find out how this exciting project was going. And to use his phrase, it was a nightmare. You had all the bankers on one side of the room, typically men a little bit older in pinstripe suits. At the other side of the room were all the IT coders, typically a little bit younger, in jeans, more relaxed. The bankers were complaining that the IT specialists didn't understand blanking and all their ideas wouldn't work. The IT specialists were getting frustrated because they weren't getting listened to and their ideas were just being rejected out of hand. So that's in UK banking. Let's move to the other side of the world now. Last year, I went out to Myanmar, a country recovering from sanctions, to talk to their banks, and more importantly than the banks, the mobile phone firms that are providing the IT and the banking services to the general population there. And their big challenge is that they got people who understood banking, they got clearly people who understood mobile, but they were contracting out, and particularly to Malaysia, all their program and IT developments, but they didn't have anyone that could bridge the gap and to actually explain what was needed and to communicate between the two disciplines. These are the problems that the FinTech program at MMU and other similar programs around the country are seeking to try and solve. And it was really interesting earlier to hear about James talking about coming back to education later in life. And I was also interested to hear about North Coders taking people from a range of backgrounds, because the students that come on this program have a diverse range of experiences. Now, I feel slightly outdone, Amal, because we haven't got a single station announcer on the program yet, and I'm going to need to work on that. But we do have chartered accountants, IT graduates, people who've founded IT businesses already, finance directors, blockchain consultancy members, and even people from an overseas central bank. And what we've even had is someone coming from the Maldives to study that clearly it wasn't for the weather in Manchester. So what does the programme seek to do? Well, we aim to focus on a core understanding that can really be used so they've got more of the skills which Amol has just highlighted are needed. So when I teach regulation, I'm not really that bothered about whether they know the details of the latest counter-cyclical buffer that's been put into the bar regulations. But what I do want them to be able to do is to be able to articulate why capital is important, how prudential regulation works, and how it can be applied to new technology. Now that sounds really high level, so let me just give you a brief amount of detail about how we might do that on one of the units. Well, the students, and I think there might even be some of the students on the call today, the first part of an assignment that they've had recently is to look back at the financial crisis, to look back at the failures of banks like RBS, to analyse what went wrong in terms of capital, liquidity and culture, and to come up with recommendations. So at the moment, it's not sounding very high-tech and sexy. But what we do in part B is we say, great, you've now identified all of that. You are now working as a director on a new FinTech business. To avoid all the issues of the past, what are you going to recommend the businesses do? And with that, we get them to think more creatively, to look forward and to try and apply some of the knowledge they've gained. Now, that sort of approach applies throughout the course. Now, Amal talked about a 12-week program, and do you know what? Doing one of our programming or blockchain units is not going to turn you into a coder if you're from a banking background. But what you will be able to do is go beyond the theory, get your hands dirty, and actually have done some programming. And this approach applies as we go through behavioral bias modules, AI and machine learning, digital leadership, and more and more. Till ultimately we get them to do a dissertation, which means they can take the bits and across the course that they're really interested in and hopefully create a project and a piece of work which will push the boundaries academically, but more importantly, so they can take that into the workplace, and many of them get jobs off the back of that. Now, Julian, I'm going to let you into a secret because I can't see anyone, and I'm just going to assume it's you and me on the webinar. The secret is this: the professors and lecturers on the course, we think it's us that make it success, and it's not. Sure, I've delivered to SME bankers, and I've led teams of SME bankers going out advising clients. So when I talk about regulations, I can talk about how it really works, how you deliver the service and loans and the decisions to customers, and how we build that around the regulations. Professor Paul Smith was a partner at PwC, and he was responsible for the AI being introduced into PwC, so he can talk with real experience. Niels Pedersen, as well as releasing his latest book, he used to work at one of the regulators. He can bring real experience. Ian Cleverden, he rolled out learning and development for the commercial bank at Lloyd's when they digitized. So we can talk with that real grounded experience of what goes on. But the real magic, what makes the course a success, is the students. Because the reality is, if you're a banking student and you're struggling with one of the programming units, you don't ring your lecturer. It's nice if you do, and we help them. But what you do is you speak to the person next to you that's been working you on the project that's got a background in that, and they help you. Later on, if you're a chartered accountant and you've got people who are struggling with blockchain, well, do you know what? You can help them and they can help you all the way through the course. And as they work together, both on the things that we specifically set them and naturally and organically anyway, they're actually beginning to understand each other's point of view. The language, and I don't mean international language, I mean the different ways that different industries talk. And this brings a far broader set of skills than the quite a narrow range, which I know rightly highlighted before. So what are the future holding for us? Well, in a bit of agility that's unusual for a university organisation, we're about to roll out a programme across the world in an online modular version, which means that wherever you are, you can study that online, or you can come to MMU to actually deliver it. And we're going to scale our operations to do that. But more importantly, where do I see the future? I want to see our graduates in organisations, be it a big bank or smaller fintech, being the ones to cross the floor, to maybe not trip over the beanbag, but actually to build a bridge between the two disciplines and actually bring together fin and tech. And that is what we are trying to solve with the Masters at MMU. Thank you, Julian. Back to you.
Thank you, Stuart. Thanks. Cracking update. Very, very upbeat. I've pre-ordered Niels's new book. Looks really good. So yeah, that's coming out in. I think it's in December that it's going to get posted out. It's available on Amazon.
I'm surprised he's not sending me messages now.
Yeah, I've forgotten the exact title now, but something around FinTech case studies.
Yeah, he's bringing real life case studies and actually seeing how this can be applied, which is great for our students because, you know, I'm speaking for university, we've got to do the academic stuff, but to me, I'm more interested in what they can do with it when they get out into the, in quotes, real world. That's what excites us.
Cool. Thanks, Stuart. Thanks very much. Okay, now we're going to hear from Patrice from Ignata. Patrice, can I invite you to take over the screen?
I am just about to take over. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm really excited to be here with you. You can now see my face. Bear with me a second. So, what am I here to talk to you about today? Hold on a second. Got you. So, inclusivity in FinTech. So, when this first came up, I spoke with Matt, and Matt was like, actually, Patrice, I need you to come in and talk to these leaders about how to think about inclusivity from the start of their journey. Don't need to tell you, I think the speakers today, James, Amul, and Stuart just now have been really clear about the value that inclusivity and also diversity can bring to the workplace. It's really important as you set up your businesses for success that you really think about the policies and practices that you're putting in place that will welcome a diverse range of people to work together effectively. It's, you know, as James mentioned, you know, the FinTech industry has gained over £100 billion in investment since last year. The amount is only going up. As Amul kind of mentioned, tech is the future. We are all recipients of tech, and therefore we don't want those biases to be ingrained within the technology that we're all developing. If you have a more diverse and inclusive workforce, that means that you're going to remove those biases from the technology that you're building. When you remove those biases, it will be more inclusive, and that will lead to more success. Some of the research that I've done and some of the conversations I've had have really opened my eyes to the light that in this industry, recruitment works really quickly. When it works really quickly, you have a set type that you need to hire. You give your recruitment consultants a very tight description, and you ask them to get someone in as soon as possible. Because for many of you, thoughts shift to your organization and design after you've got the money in. So a few focus points that I'd like you to take away from today. Team attraction and retention. So I would suspect most of you have your A team already. You need to be able to cast the net a bit wider than what you have done previously if you haven't already done so. Fast recruitment doesn't always equal great recruitment. I think a lot of you are successful because you go with your gut instinct, but sometimes your gut instinct when it comes to recruitment means that you will hire with a similarity bias, meaning that if you look around your organization, there might be very similar people around you. And if you have very similar people around you, the likelihood is that you're not very diverse and people coming into the organisation that aren't similar to you won't feel very included. Think about what makes your organisation special, especially post-corona, where most people are working from home and that trend is set to continue. What's going to set your organisation apart from others within this space? And this is important because, as we'll talk about in a minute, attrition is your worst enemy. So once you get someone in, you've taken the time to recruit them, they are well tuned and well oiled in the way in which you do business, for you to lose them and start again is a real pain, and it upsets the team dynamic sometimes. So it's important for you to really think about that as you set yourself up for success. Comparable benefits are really important, and that we'll touch on shortly, because actually different people need different benefits. So it's important that not only from a cash, a bonus perspective, you have a comparable benefits offering. So just as a reminder, we've touched on a lot of these, and Amal, I really loved your session when you talked about such a range of diverse individuals that you've taken through North Coders. I think that's fantastic and amazing. And you mentioned a lot of these in there, but we've got protected characteristics, which I just wanted to pull out. There are lots of other characteristics that we need, like neurodiversity, which Amal mentioned, but taking into consideration a range of ages within your organization, whether you are receptive and adaptable to people with disabilities, gender reassignment, whether people are married or whether they're in a civil partnership, especially for women, pregnancy and maternity. When I talked about comparable benefits, it's really important. If you want to have women in the workforce, if you want it to be 50-50, you cannot have an organisational policy which doesn't have a good maternity package, or it doesn't support women as they go through pregnancy. Race, religion or belief. So, this can be something as little as respecting today, for example. Today is Thanksgiving in the US, which means that if you have an international organization or you're dealing with international partnerships, that you have to be aware of those specific holidays. If it's Diwali or if it's Ramadan, really just taking into account that the traditional Christian English holidays as Easter and Christmas, everyone might not celebrate that. So having a policy which allows individuals to take those certain days off, which mean a lot to them, those small differences can really make a big difference to individuals as they choose which organisation to work for. Sex and gender and sexual orientation, obviously, as we touched on before in a more section. So that's just a bit of a reminder as you construct your diversity and inclusion policies, as you're looking at your A team and you're looking to expand your team. If you don't have much diversity across these different characteristics, you've got an organisation which is pretty homogeneous. There's not much diversity in there, and therefore you're probably restricting yourself in terms of any opportunities that you might have. As I said, attrition is going to be your enemy. That's one of the key things that I want you to take away from today. Really check yourself and understand what your bias is. And if overplayed, what does that mean? What I mean by that is some people come in, and I know from speaking to some of the guys at Matt Burton and Andy, they know exactly the type that they want. And if you know exactly the type that you want, the likelihood is you are probably neglecting some of these characteristics. If that preference is overplayed, what that preference will lead to is an organisation that is very similar. And as I said before, if you have a very homogeneous organisation, you're not going to get as much value as you could do if you had the diversity of thought and diversity of individuals that people with these characteristics will bring. Have you asked your team what an inclusive environment feels like for them? Do they feel like your organisation is an inclusive environment? These are some questions I'd really like you to ask yourself. Now, I've got a little bit of an interactive exercise for you. I hope this is going to work. Could you all pick up your devices, mobiles, and put in menti.com? And could you put in the code 6774603? Hope you all got that. Hold on a second. Now,
Can you say the code again, Patrice?
1 second.
Thanks.
Oh, some people have already gone in and done it.
I'll put it in the chat. What's the code to remind people?
6774603.
Thanks.
I love this. There should be another question in there as well. So we've got 2 questions in there. Can everyone see the first question? I'm assuming not. What I really wanted to gauge from you guys is, whilst we can have this session, we can talk about inclusivity. I think everybody has the intention to be inclusive, but actually what we can see in this, and this is moving along. So the first question is, I have a specific type of person that I like to employ. So this goes from a scale of 1 to 5. I'm quite impressed by the fact that we're kind of in the middle, so half and half. But equally, I think people neither agree or disagree. So you're on the fence there. I'm not sure you're kind of being honest with yourselves when we ask that question, because I think I used to recruit a lot of people from a finance background. I'm a chartered accountant, and I used to have a bias, I'll be honest, that I wanted people from a chartered accountancy background because I felt like they were more similar to me. But actually, I realized really early on that I was then limiting the talent that came through the pipeline. Knowing the type of knowing the type of person that would fit into your company, that's really important, right? Because you want to know whether that cultural fit is going to be there. But then equally, the question that I often ask people is, that's great, you know what type of person would fit into my company, but am I being flexible in my company and in my business to welcome more people to be more inclusive as an environment? And then actively consider and seeking talent from diverse backgrounds is really important, because actually I love the fact that you all most of you strongly agree with that, and you can really see there that that's quite nicely linked with, you know, the type of person that fit into my organization, actively seeking that diverse talent and culture. That's the first step. The step is ensuring that you're actually seeking that talent and you're considering it. Because if you're not in a position where you're actually even looking for it, you're never going to get it inside the organization. And then your team is diverse, neither agree or disagree. I think that question's either really a yes or a no. So we really need to think about and consider how those thoughts lead to actions and how those actions lead to results. And by that, I mean actively considering and seeking talent, understanding how you can help them to fit within your organization, and how you can flex your organization to ensure that they fit. And therefore, my expectation for you and my wish for you would be to have a team which is really diverse, because when teams are diverse, we know that revenues come in a lot quicker. We know that eyes are opened and you have that diversity of thought. And so it's really key as you step up and ramp up. And I know that all of you on this session are at different stages of funding and different stages of your organization, but it's really important for you to consider this diversity as you go through.
Sorry, Patrice, you froze.
Yep. Oh, yep. Can you see me?
Great. I didn't know if you were finished there or if you were just turning the screen up. Sorry. Thanks. That was a fascinating little exercise. And yeah, that one of your closing points there, diverse teams perform better. I mean, it's been widely proven, hasn't it? But it remains such a challenge for organisations to actually demonstrate it. So I feel that challenge myself as you know, as an employer. It's very it's difficult to achieve.
And I think also when you're geographically challenged as well. So we talked about, and Will talked about it, and James had talked about being reflective of the areas that you serve. So if the local area is not as diverse as it could be, then it's really difficult to bring talent in. But I think with FinTech, it's not geographically stuck. The products and the services that I'm assuming most of the companies on this call provide are not stuck in a geographical location. And therefore, especially in the age of working from home and being a bit flexible in that regard, how do you build teams? How do you build those remote teams and really pull in people who have that diversity so you can bend and flex your organization and bring some more value in?
Yeah, no, agreed. I mean, and FinTech, despite the great efforts of a lot of people actually, and FinTech is making progress, but it remains dominated by white male founders. And the point that you've just reminded us of, that I thought was a great point by James earlier, around the do the people in your team reflect the people who you're trying to serve? That it's a bit of a sort of circular argument in FinTech in a way, because you're often trying to target the banking sector or the FS sector, and diversity isn't always very well represented in there either. And so
I think when you're trying to target those areas and they're not reflective necessarily of the customers they serve, then that's your unique selling point. So when you talk about what sets you aside from some of your competitors, if you can have a fully diverse team or more diverse team than average, actually that is a USP, and that will set you apart, because those organizations aren't representative. So actually, if they are funding other organizations, then those organizations need to come with something a little bit different, not just product, but also diversity of the team as well.
Yeah, fascinating stuff, very thought-provoking, thank you. We're going to move into the panel now. We're running a few minutes behind, but I think it's just because we've had so many interesting speakers, and obviously we did James's Q&A earlier on as well. So if all the people on the panel could all take your mute and put your video on, that'd be great. So welcome back, Amal, Stuart, and Patrice, and a very warm welcome to Manila, and also Matt. Thanks, Matt. I don't know if you were going to turn your camera on then or not. So we're joined now by Manila McLean from Newcastle Strategic Solutions, and Newcastle Strategic Solutions have been a regular speaker at FinTech North, and it's great to have you with us today, Manila. So as you've not spoken yet, then can you introduce yourself and the organisation, give us a little bit of background, and then I'll probably just ask you a couple of questions to start with as well, if that's okay.
Yeah, of course, happy to do that. So thanks for introducing me, Julian. I'm Manila, and my background is in digital transformation within financial services. I've worked in financial services for over 20 years now, and for a variety of organisations. So the life and pensions, large scale retail banks, smaller startup challenger banks, and I'm the Chief Information Officer at Newcastle Building Society Group, which is well known in the Northeast as a strong regional building society with a national presence for mortgages and online savings, and also a financial advice business. Newcastle Strategic Solutions is a part of the group, and is an outsourced savings management business for many other banks and building societies throughout the UK. So I guess I wear two hats. I'm the CIO for the building society, and also for the savings management business. Collectively, our society and customers, just to give you an idea of scale, we have about 1.5 million customers, and we have 15 banks and building societies running off of our platform. We've got huge digital capabilities and significant ambitions to grow that as well. And a lot of the content that we've shared this morning is very very relevant to our business at the moment, as we are growing our tech capabilities and evolving what we have today. And in terms of recruitment, it's been a big part of my role this year. I've grown the team by about 20-25%, brought in a number of new and different skill sets and capabilities. evolved the diversity across the team as well. So it's I've been smiling and nodding along to a lot of the points that have already been made this morning.
Cool, thank you. Yeah, I mean, Newcastle Strategic Solutions is a real northern success story, and it's not as well known as you'd imagine, considering how many people you guys employ and some of the brands that you serve. Now, when you joined, you joined as digital director, and then you've obviously been promoted in that time to CIO. And I know one of your first tasks was to recruit a fairly sizable digital team to build that digital function out. Could you talk us through the experience of trying to bring in those skills that, as we know, and as Amal's presentation sort of highlighted earlier, are kind of hard to find and much sought after, some of the sort of tech skills, digital skills?
Yeah, sure. So the way I would describe the team historically, it's been quite engineering led. So the tech provision that we have and the experience that we offer is very, very robust. It does the job that we need it to do. It serves a significant number of clients and customers across the UK. But the drive to move with digital requires a different skill set. And whilst the team had been growing organically over a number of years, and I guess learning as they went, with a number of colleagues within the team performing multiple roles. As you know, there's different disciplines within technology and within digital. So there was a number of key capabilities that I really needed to identify and bring into place early on, and the digital team was one of them. So there's some key capabilities around design, around user research, around solution architecture, just to name a few, actually. So I guess the first part of the exercise was to understand what was the mix of the team that I had inherited, where were the real strengths within the team, and where were the capability gaps, and mapping it against where do we want to take the business in the next 5 years, and from there identifying what did we need to bring in. So that was an exercise that we performed quite early on, and then looked at how do we bring in that mix. And of course, this was pre-pandemic, so we were typically favouring colleagues who would be in the office 9 to 5, Monday to Friday. So typically that would be you've straight away you've got your geographical constraints, because you're looking for that talent within region. And actually, I had been about to press the button on quite a significant recruitment scale in February. We paused that because the pandemic kicked off, reevaluated it, and actually restarted it at the end of May, which allowed us to understand what the impact was starting to look like on the business, and what future flexible working opportunities there may be, potentially removing some of the perceived geographical constraints that we had, opening up the net to a wider talent pool, both in terms of gender mix and greater diversity. And we've taken, probably, I'd say, since about the end of May until, I think it'll probably take us until about the end of Q1 next year to really go through that whole exercise. But we've taken our time. We've tried to make sure that we've got a really great mix within the team, both from FS backgrounds, tech backgrounds, other industries as well, because as you know, tech skills, digital skills are very transferable. So as long as you've got the right mix, and importantly, I think fit for culture. As I said, I've worked in different FS organizations, all of them very, very different culturally. So the team that I would perhaps have brought into a large scale retail bank is quite different from what I would bring into Newcastle. But it's understanding that mix based on what you've got, what your culture is, and what you need in order to drive the business forward for the next few years.
Cool. I mean, how many people do you have? Is it about 1,200?
1,200, of course, across the whole group, yeah.
So when you talk about a team being different that you would bring into strategic solutions to what you would have brought into a retail bank, it's still a pretty big organisation.
Yeah.
And I'll ask you this, and then I'll also open this one up to everyone else. How is it trying to recruit digital skills into what is essentially a quite a corporate environment with a 1,200 person organization, when there's the lure of the they're quite trendy really, startup space, the sort of the more the different culture that exists there. It's quite there's quite a lot of drawing people to places like digital consultancies or startups themselves. How do you compete against that, or do you need to?
I think it's important that you're really authentic about the organisation that you're representing and what you're inviting talent to join. Being a mutual organisation, that really appeals to a certain type of person that really wants to benefit the community, to focus on a strong purpose for the organisation. So I think it's important to draw that out. To attract the type of talent that we need in order to drive our business forward over the next few years, we do need to be ensuring that we're promoting the new tech that we're working with, the exciting projects that colleagues can be working on, the variety of customers, the end customers that they're able to impact. But I mean, we have an investors in people. IIP Investors in People Award. We were rated platinum this year. That for those organisations that actually are assessed for IIP, that's in the top 2%, which shows the focus that we put on people and the importance that brings. And I don't think there's any surprise that we're a mutual organisation, and that plays a very big part in it. So it's drawn out those types of positives for the organization. But I think the really important thing is about making sure that you're truly authentic about being honest about the organization that you're joining, warts and all, so that colleagues can make a choice. Is that the type of organization that they want to join now or potentially in the future? Because I think the other point is about, and it's something I was chatting to Matt about on Friday, recruitment it's a long-term game. So there may be talent that we'll spot now, and they might not be right for the organization today, but they might be in 12, 18 months, 2 years time or so on. So myself and my first team, we're constantly on the lookout for talent, and we may spot people now that we'll keep warm for a number of years time.
Yeah, sure. Matt, let me bring you in and ask you to sort of give us your experience from a recruitment sector perspective, and also just maybe reflections on what we've been talking about.
So reflections on I think the specific points around diversity and inclusion is really relevant, by the way, because it's not just about D&I, it's about the balance we have when it comes to talent management. And so I look at this year's been weird, Jude, and I'm sure we don't need to define that, but it's been an odd year where talent and particularly sourcing of talents had to really evolve, and I think for the better. Traditionally, we look at talent management in 4 areas. So we look at the attraction, acquisition, selection, and then retention. And even if you go back to kind of whole attraction points, the days of 3 or 4 years ago, even probably more recently, where it's about some average vanilla looking job adverts that go out there alongside a black book that frankly is massively out of date. Those days fortunately have gone, and as an industry we've all had to become a lot more sophisticated in terms of how we attract new talent into that pool. And that's things also linked to the D&I point, which is attraction. You need to source from communities that mirror the community you're trying to build internally. So that's opened up kind of digital, social media, professional social media, also kind of real kind of personal social media activities to drive awareness. It's also then around how do we ensure that the message we are delivering on behalf of our clients is authentic. So trying to encourage our clients to have genuine policies. Bits of paper isn't a policy in my view, and actually the employer value proposition that we are there to articulate on behalf of our clients has to be genuine, credible, and backed up by what you see when you land. Candidates are becoming a lot more desensitized to average sell nowadays. So the acquisition activity we undertake has all got to be around deploying tools to keep candidates genuinely interested in a process. You know, the market's pretty vibrant out there at the moment, and there are plenty of opportunities for people, particularly within kind of technology space. So it's how do we make sure that our clients are a destination of choice? That links back to the attraction, but also links forward to the people who are acting on behalf of you, the kind of client community, which is, are your recruiters genuinely able to understand and then articulate a very credible proposition to those candidates? The third point then is selection for us, and that is both in terms of a recruiter's perspective, but also the client's perspective. And we're all at the moment around trying to be a bit innovative around balanced decision making. So using, you know, even to the extreme of some of our clients in the insurance sector, which, you know, I don't want to be too broad, but is predominantly run by, you know, white middle-aged men. And what we've been doing there is trying to drive panel interviews. So panel interviews where decisions are made by a broader range of people within the business, rather than always having recruited the type of people they've recruited in the past. And then in terms of retention, we're seeing a real focus on that at the moment, which, you know, my view of retention, by the way, is that retention is more often than not just down to bad hiring. And if we can fix attraction, acquisition, and selection and make that all very process driven, very believable, backed up with data and insight, then actually retention genuinely, I think, is more than achievable, and certainly its opposite, attrition, is very easily avoided. Just a couple of other bits I think linked to the D&I point. This going back to my point earlier about the whole policy point, we are seeing candidates really focused in on what do the policies mean. You know, what does a maternity policy look like? What does the remote working policy look like? What does the flexible working policy look like? This isn't stuff nowadays that are the kind of throwaway comments. They're genuinely part of the decision making of a candidate when they've got multiple processes on the go. And my final observation, and this is going off a bit of memory, so please don't quote me, and I'll send you through the data, but I did some analysis in the last couple of weeks around the last 12 months of activity across MBA and a couple of the MBA subsidiaries, which showed that, quite startlingly to start off with, that 64% of people we placed were male, 36% female, and that concerned me immediately. So then we started to drill into the detail to have a look at what that mix was. And actually, if you look at permanent hiring, it's a lot closer. It's about 56% to 44%. If you look at contract hiring, where predominantly contracts, certainly in our markets, is technology driven, change and transformation, it's something like 72% male, 28% female. So I think if there's one thing, and this is why I really enjoyed my conversation with Manila the other day, and some of the stuff I've read over the weekend, Manila, that you've been talking quite frequently about, is around driving more kind of, you know, female concentration into the technology C&T space. And I think that's something we've all got to address, by the way, because they are pretty stark figures. You know, we're talking over 700 placements in that space, and 72% of people hired have been male hires and 28% female. Does that answer your question? I'm not sure. You left it open to me, Julian. So I
did leave it pretty open because I wanted to give you the opportunity to sort of share a few reflections on the event, which you've done. Now I'm conscious we're coming up to 12:30, and we haven't even had all the panelists be able to contribute a point yet. So I don't really want to stop us at 12:30. But that said, I'm going to need to drop off myself soon. So I'm going to get Joe to rejoin, and because Joe normally closes out our events. But I'd like to get people's reflections on what do you think are the key things that you would advise someone to address? So if we're thinking about a fintech employer looking into 2021, what do you think is the thing they need to focus on the most in relation to talent and skills? It is a slightly broad question, but I hope that'll enable everyone to get a point that's relevant to them across. Amal, would you like to go first?
Yeah, absolutely. So I want to pick up on what Manila said about the culture point and use that as a starting point, I guess, to answer that question in a more holistic way. I think you're absolutely right, warts and all. The culture needs to come across, because the person coming in might not see those as warts, and that's what you want. You want people to be aligned to what you do and aligned to your mission, but also aligned to the other people within that organization. That plays a massive part in culture. And if I can talk about sort of the North Coders kind of alumni experience as an example, I have quite a rigid theory about what both sort of attraction and retention looks like. But, you know, for me, so long as you get these things right, and this is any technology business, then I think you're on to a winning strategy. And for me, it is about being able to explain that culture and that culture to be real, as you know, or the word authentic's being used. But learning and development to be really key to every person's journey within that company, because everyone wants to grow. No one wants to come in and stay at the same level. But if you have that conversation at the start and then stick to that conversation, then you're likely to get buy-in, because you have been honest and you've created a roadmap for that person in your organization. And for me at North Coders, you know, it's now a 14-week course because of now doing it remotely largely. And we did take the pandemic to improve certain sections of the course, and so we tried as hard as we could to use the period for self-reflection, as well as, obviously it was quite tough for a while. But you know, if you go into a business and that business then can offer you the sorts of training that we talked about with Dev Accelerator, or other training or whatever it is, you learn coding in 12, 14 weeks, whatever it is, and you need to be using code really quickly. But all of the graduates all the North Coders alumni that I talk to want to know that learning and development is going to be part of their ongoing journey. And then I think you then need to be really clear about what progress looks like as well, because, you know, and from, in my opinion, it should never be about time served, i.e. you get a promotion after being here for 12 months or whatever. It's linked into success, to behaviors, to the learning and development plan. And I think, and the companies that do best hiring North Coders, because that's the example pool I've got to talk about, are those that stick to that. A business called iVendi, who do finance for car showrooms, and they do that. I think it's that widget that sits on the side of car showrooms websites. And they, over a 12-month period, hired 16 North Coders. And the two things out of that case study that really struck me is, in that period, in the following kind of 18-month period, they didn't have to hire a mid-level developer, because those 16 North Coders they hired were kind of matched to a skills matrix that they had. And then they were all given that opportunity to develop and promised the progress that was matched to that skills matrix. And for me, to not have to dip into the recruitment market using recruiters because they've hired from us, to get those people up to mid-level was a really fascinating thing. Yeah, it's investment, it's time, it is looking forward rather than trying to plug gaps and backfill. And that, you know, recruiters are always going to be needed for that. But if you create a journey, and it's what Matt said a minute ago, if you're creating a journey, if you're recruiting correctly and retaining correctly, then attrition is going to go down. I've not talked about diversity and inclusion. I'll probably leave that to Patrice in her sum up. But for me, if you stick to that kind of formula, then I think you will get it right, and you'll get ambassadors, and you'll get people that want to be part of your tribe, and they'll grow with you, and you'll see the long-term gains over a longer period of time.
Wise words, Amal. Thank you. Guys, I'm going to have to excuse myself. I'm actually speaking at another event, and I'm due to be in the speaker preview bit at the moment. So they're ringing me and chasing me. So Joe's going to take over there. I just personally want to thank all of you for for your contributions today, and to MBA for supporting. And I'll catch you later, Joe.
Thanks, Julian. Yeah, we'll excuse you from that one. Yeah, I just want to open that question out then. Patrice, can we hear from you next on that one? Just a reminder, that was a question around, fintech employers focusing on in 2021 what they should focus on.
I think I mentioned in my slides, attrition is going to be your biggest enemy. Sorry, Matt. But essentially, Emma, exactly what you said. It's around ensuring everyone on your team has the opportunity to create value, because that tribe that you will create, you need people in your tribe who have different skill sets. And if you keep on recruiting from the same pool with the same skill sets, you're not going to have a tribe that's going to be able to withhold some of the challenges that the competitors are going to bring. But the really important part there, just touching on what Amor said, was around planning your growth through that learning and development piece. So the fact that North Coders, that company hired 16 North Coders and they were able to develop themselves so that you didn't need a mid-level coder, is exactly what all organizations should be thinking about. So it's not just bringing them in, it's having that environment which allows them not to just survive, but to thrive, and that you can plan out your future learning and development to ensure that you're pulling them in and you're encouraging them to stay, because they can see that development. And then ultimately that will lead to retention. So across all spectrums of diversity, not any particular section, but I think that those key modules are what you all need to be thinking about.
Brilliant, thank you, Patrice. Manila, I'll come to you next. Do you mind giving us your sort of closing thoughts around that, and then we'll go over to Stuart?
Yeah, I think I agree with everything that's been said so far. I think for me, it's recognising that there's no cookie cutter approach to building the team, and you need to work with what the culture is in your business, what the current mix is that you have today, and what you see as the journey that you're going to go on, because your team will evolve and grow, your business strategy will evolve and grow, and attrition doesn't worry me really. I think it's okay for people to come and go, and I think sometimes you have people that go and then come back, and that's great as well, because they come back with different levels of experience. I think just picking up on the diversity point, within our organisation, diversity within the tech space in terms of gender is not a massive issue. I mean, in my leadership team, it's 40% female, and that's a team of 8, so it's kind of 40-60 split. Within the whole function of 185 tech roles, I have about 25% female, but in the deep tech roles, it's so much less. That's an area that I'm concerned about, and we're not going to resolve that in the next couple of years. That's about growing talent through grassroots, through the likes of the university programs that Stuart's talked about, through the likes of the programs like North Coders, like Amo's talked about as well. It's those deep tech roles. There's definitely still a scarcity of good gender mix within those. I mean, I studied computer science in 1994-95. I was probably one of 10 females in a class of 200. I don't think the mix is that much better, and I think that's going to be a challenge for us in the years to come.
Thanks, Manila. And Stuart, can I just get your thoughts before I close things off?
Yeah, I agree with what's just been said. I think on the attrition, and again, to use the phrase, not a cookie cutter approach, if you want to develop your people, it needs to be that lifelong map that Patrice talked around. That's one of the reasons we've put our program, made it modular, so people can just dip in and take one. Ours isn't the right solution for everyone. It actually might be a specific coding course with likes of North Coders you need to do, but continuing to develop and invest in your people is really, really important if you want to retain them and avoid having to recruit elsewhere. But I'd also make an observation about recruitment. If you want to recruit a diverse group of people, you need to maybe change your approaches. Actually, this time at start of this year in January, before COVID, FinTech North participated in a Future of FinTech event, actually at MMU. And as you'd expect, I dragged a load of our master's students on, some really talented people It was interesting. Some were really confident to walk up to fintech businesses, maybe some on this call, and introduce themselves and see if they could find a job. Others, and they were brilliant. I was really struggling to get them to network and say hello. And these are people that I would employ, and I know they're really talented. So it's actually, and I don't know whether the message is try not to be scary, try and reach out in different ways. But if you want different sorts of people, you're not just going to be able to rely on expecting people to be super confident networkers. We need likes of Matt Burton, we need the recruitment firms, we need Manila to be able to reach out and find a way to bridge this gap.
Excellent. Cheers, Stuart. Thanks for that. And Matt, can I just come to you quickly just for a couple of takeaway points for everybody, and then I'll end the event.
Well, not left me with much. It's going last. But, I guess there's three things. So, I mean, the one thing I find really interesting, just going back to Stuart's point, it just made at the end there, was that in pretty much every other facet of our working life, we are continually looking to re-engineer processes, make them more effective, make them more customer-centric. The one thing I don't see happen very often actually is recruitment processes don't evolve. So one of my takeaways for 2021 would be to absolutely have a keen eye for a transformational agenda around recruitment process. I think that's a genuine win. Second point I would make, going back, I think it was Patrice made, was starting to consider hiring now for 12 months from now, because genuinely to get the right talent, I do think it's a nurturing point now. Recruitment's as much marketing as it is clicking search on a database. And the third point, a little bit off the wall, is we're seeing a lot more effective recruitment take place where our clients are enabled by leadership to have a more personal profile out there. So culture for me isn't about the corporate message, it's about the people within the organization, and there seems to have been a reluctance to allow people to have a personal voice out there, and I generally think that's a big pull for candidates nowadays, is so they can see, feel, hear from peers, leaders, from ground level up within a business, so that you generally get a feel for what the true culture of that business is. So I would absolutely recommend encouraging, personal profiles on business social media.
Well, amazing, Matt. Thank you for that. I think that brings us to a close. We've overrun a little bit, but as Julian said, I think we've had some brilliant speakers today and some really profound words and some important points for us to all take away from that. So thank you to all of our speakers for joining. Thank you to Matt, Scott, and the team at MBA for supporting the session, and thank you to you, the community, for joining this event. Our next event is on the 10th of December. We're focusing on financial inclusion in what is our very first fully dedicated financial inclusion event. So you can join that one for free on the 10th of December. And this session will be recorded, so we'll be sharing that with the community as well. So thanks to everybody for joining. Thanks to our speakers, and we'll hope to see you all again soon. Cheers.